Rachel Hayes glanced at her watch for the third time in 5 minutes. She was already 20 minutes late for the quarterly board meeting, and her phone wouldn't stop buzzing with increasingly urgent messages from her assistant. The merger documents she'd been reviewing until 3 in the morning were still swimming in her head, numbers and clauses blurring together into one exhausting mess. At 34 years old, Rachel had built her technology company from nothing into an empire worth $500 million. She'd done it by working harder than everyone else, by never letting her guard down, and by keeping her personal life completely separate from everything else. Actually, if she was being honest, she didn't really have a personal life anymore. There were business dinners and networking events, sure, but real connections? Those had stopped existing about 3 years ago. That was when David happened. David, her former fiancé, who she'd trusted with everything. David, who'd stolen her software designs and sold them to a competitor 2 months before their wedding. David, who'd taught her the most valuable lesson of her life: don't let anyone close enough to hurt you. Rachel pushed through the revolving doors of the coffee shop on 5th Street, the same one she stopped at every morning when she was running late. The place was packed with the usual morning crowd, business people grabbing their caffeine fix before another day of meetings and deadlines. She maneuvered through the line with practiced efficiency, ordered her usual black coffee, no sugar, and turned to leave. That's when it happened. She collided hard with someone coming from the opposite direction. The impact sent 2 cups of hot chocolate flying through the air, and Rachel watched in slow motion as they arced toward her cream-colored Armani suit. The one she'd spent $2,000 on last month. The liquid hit her jacket and immediately began soaking through to her silk blouse underneath. Oh no, I'm so sorry. The man she'd crashed into looked absolutely horrified. He was tall, maybe 6 feet, with dark hair that looked like he'd run his hands through it too many times that morning. He wore jeans and a button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up. And he was juggling what appeared to be coloring books along with a backpack covered in cartoon characters. Rachel opened her mouth to unleash the sharp comment that was forming on her tongue. But then she noticed the little girl peeking out from behind the man's legs. The child couldn't have been more than 6 or 7 years old, with brown hair pulled into a messy ponytail, and the biggest, most worried eyes Rachel had ever seen. She was clutching a stuffed rabbit that had seen better days, holding it tight against her chest. "Daddy, is the lady mad at us?" the little girl whispered, but in the quiet that had fallen around them, everyone could hear her. The man, who must have been the girl's father, bent down slightly and put a gentle hand on his daughter's shoulder. "It's okay, Lily. Accidents happen." Then he straightened up and looked at Rachel with an expression that was equal parts apologetic and exhausted. "I'm so sorry. I wasn't watching where I was going. I'll pay for the dry cleaning, of course, or replace the suit. Whatever you need." Rachel looked at him more carefully. Up close, she could see the tiredness etched into his face, the kind that comes from too many sleepless nights. There were dark circles under his eyes, and his shirt, while clean, was wrinkled in a way that suggested he'd pulled it straight from the dryer that morning. The little girl was wearing mismatched socks, one with polka dots and one with stripes, visible beneath her school uniform. Something in Rachel's chest tightened, though she couldn't explain why. She'd been ready to be angry, to demand compensation and make this stranger's morning as terrible as hers was shaping up to be. But looking at this clearly overwhelmed father and his worried daughter, the words wouldn't come. "It's fine," she heard herself say, and she was as surprised as anyone. Really, it was an accident. The man blinked at her, clearly not expecting that response. "Are you sure? That suit looks expensive and I just ruined it with chocolate. Lily's favorite, by the way. She won't drink regular coffee, thank goodness, but she's obsessed with hot chocolate. Daddy makes the best hot chocolate," Lily added, her voice a bit stronger now that Rachel hadn't yelled at them. "He puts extra marshmallows in mine." Despite everything, despite being late and covered in chocolate and generally having the worst morning, Rachel felt the corner of her mouth twitch, almost like it wanted to smile. The sensation was so foreign she almost didn't recognize it. "Extra marshmallows sound important," Rachel said, directing her comment to Lily. The little girl's face brightened immediately. The father let out a long breath, relief visible in his shoulders as they relaxed slightly. "I'm Ben Morrison, by the way. This is my daughter Lily. We're usually not this disastrous, I promise. It's just been one of those mornings. Actually, it's been one of those years, but that's a longer story." He laughed, but there was something sad in it. Rachel recognized that laugh. She'd heard it coming out of her own mouth more times than she could count over the past few years. It was the laugh of someone trying to hold everything together when everything wanted to fall apart. "Rachel Hayes," she said, accepting the handful of napkins Ben was offering her. She dabbed at her jacket, knowing it was probably useless but doing it anyway. "And I understand those kinds of mornings. Believe me." "You work around here?" Ben asked, trying to help clean up the mess on the floor while keeping an eye on Lily, who had started to wander toward the pastry display. "I have an office a few blocks away," Rachel said vaguely. She'd learned years ago not to lead with the fact that she was a CEO. People treated her differently when they knew. They either wanted something from her or were intimidated by her. Sometimes both. Ben nodded, corralling Lily back to his side. "We're heading to school, or we were supposed to be there 15 minutes ago. Her teacher's going to think I don't know how to read a clock." He glanced at his daughter with clear affection. Someone insisted she needed to bring her favorite coloring books to share with the class today, which meant finding them in the disaster zone we call her bedroom. "They're not in a disaster zone," Lily protested. "They're organized by color families." "Right, my mistake. Organized chaos," Ben said with a genuine smile this time, the kind that reached his eyes. Rachel watched the easy interaction between father and daughter, feeling like she was observing something from behind glass. When was the last time she'd had that kind of warmth with anyone? Her parents had stopped calling as often after she kept canceling dinner plans. Her college friends had mostly drifted away, tired of her never being available. Even her assistant maintained a professional distance, probably because Rachel had never given her any reason to do otherwise. "You should get going then," Rachel said, stepping back. "School waits for no one." "Right, yes. But please let me at least give you my card for the dry cleaning." Ben fumbled in his pocket and pulled out a slightly bent business card. "I'm an architect. Not that that's relevant to ruining your suit, but there it is." Rachel took the card more to be polite than anything else. Ben Morrison, Senior Architect, Morrison & Associates Design. There was a phone number and an email address. She slipped it into her purse without really looking at it. "It was nice meeting you, Rachel," Lily said suddenly, waving with the hand that wasn't holding the rabbit. "I'm sorry about your pretty clothes." "It's okay, Lily. You didn't do anything wrong," Rachel said, and she meant it. "Have a good day at school." As Ben and Lily hurried out of the coffee shop, Lily turned back once more to wave. Rachel found herself waving back, standing there in her chocolate-stained suit, watching them disappear into the morning crowd. She should have felt annoyed. She was even later now, her suit was ruined, and she'd have to go home and change before the meeting. But instead she felt something else. Something she couldn't quite name. It was like a tiny crack had appeared in the wall she'd built around herself, and a small beam of light was getting through. Rachel shook her head, dismissing the thought. She didn't have time for this kind of reflection. She had a company to run, a merger to finalize, and about a dozen other crises that would demand her attention before lunch. But as she waited for her replacement coffee and sent a text to her assistant explaining why she'd be even later, Rachel realized she was thinking about Ben Morrison and his daughter, about the exhaustion in his eyes and the love evident in every interaction with Lily, about the way he'd apologized like the world was ending over some spilled hot chocolate. She pulled out his business card and looked at it properly this time. An architect. That was interesting. Her company was about to break ground on a new headquarters building downtown. They'd hired a firm to handle the design, but she couldn't remember the name off the top of her head. Rachel slipped the card back into her purse and collected her coffee. As she walked to her car, she couldn't shake the image of Lily's worried face, or the way Ben had immediately focused on comforting his daughter before worrying about anything else. 3 years ago, she decided that relationships were too risky, that trust was for people who could afford to be hurt. She'd built her walls high and strong, and they'd served her well. They'd kept her safe. They'd kept her focused. They'd kept her successful. But standing in that coffee shop covered in hot chocolate, watching a single father try to hold his world together for his little girl, Rachel had felt something she hadn't felt in a very long time. She'd felt human again. And that was the most terrifying thing of all. 2 weeks passed, and Rachel had almost forgotten about the coffee shop incident. Almost. The business card was still in her purse, somehow never making it to the trash despite her usual habit of keeping things organized. She'd look at it occasionally when searching for something else, see Ben Morrison's name, and feel that strange flutter in her chest before pushing the feeling away. The merger was consuming every moment of her time. Contracts, negotiations, meetings that stretched past midnight. This was what she was good at. This was safe. Numbers didn't betray you. Business deals didn't break your heart. Rachel was in her office reviewing architectural proposals when her assistant, Nina, knocked on the door. The design team from Morrison & Associates is here for the headquarters presentation. Conference room 3. Rachel looked up from her laptop. Morrison & Associates? The architectural firm we hired for the new building? They've been working on the designs for 3 months. Nina gave her a concerned look. Are you okay? You've been at this merger for weeks straight. Maybe you should take a break. I'm fine, Rachel said automatically, standing up and gathering her materials. Morrison & Associates. That name was familiar. Where had she heard it before? The realization hit her as she walked into the conference room and saw Ben Morrison standing by the projection screen, setting up his laptop. He was dressed more formally today in slacks and a blazer, but his hair still had that slightly messy quality, like he'd been running his hands through it. When he looked up and saw her, his eyes widened in recognition. Rachel, he said, and she could hear the surprise in his voice. Mr. Morrison, she replied, keeping her tone professional even as her mind raced. This was the architect, the single father with the sweet daughter and the exhausted eyes. He was the lead designer on her project. The other executives filed into the room and Rachel took her seat at the head of the table. Ben recovered quickly from his surprise, introducing his team and launching into the presentation. But Rachel could feel his eyes drift to her between slides, questioning, curious. The designs he presented were impressive, more than impressive actually. Where most corporate headquarters were all glass and steel and cold efficiency, Ben's vision incorporated green spaces, natural light, and areas designed for people to actually connect with each other. There were outdoor terraces on multiple floors, a ground-level park that would be open to the public, and interior spaces that felt warm instead of sterile. The goal, Ben explained, pointing to a rendering of the main lobby, is to create a space where people actually want to be, where they feel human, not like cogs in a machine. Studies show that employees are more productive and creative when they work in environments that acknowledge their humanity. One of Rachel's vice presidents, Michael, leaned back in his chair with a skeptical expression. That's all very nice in theory, but we need functionality. We need to maximize square footage for workstations. These common areas seem like wasted space. Ben didn't miss a beat. With respect, I'd argue that what seems like wasted space is actually an investment in your most valuable asset, your people. The research backs this up. Companies with these kinds of environments see lower turnover, higher productivity, and better collaboration. You save money in the long run. Rachel watched the exchange with interest. Ben was confident without being arrogant, passionate without being preachy. He clearly believed in what he was proposing, and he had the facts to support it. But more than that, she could see the same warmth in his professional presentation that she'd witnessed with his daughter. He designed buildings the way he seemed a parent, with genuine care. The meeting stretched on for 3 hours. By the end, Rachel's team had raised every possible concern and objection, and Ben had addressed each one thoughtfully. When the others finally filed out of the conference room, Rachel lingered behind, organizing her notes slowly. Ben was packing up his materials when he spoke. So you're the CEO, I didn't realize. I don't always advertise it, Rachel said. And you're the architect who destroyed my favorite suit. He winced. I was hoping you'd forgotten about that. Did the dry cleaner manage to save it? It's hanging in my closet as a reminder that not everything can be fixed, she said. But there was no bite in her words. Your designs are impressive. Thank you. That means a lot, especially coming from you. He hesitated, then added, Look, I know this is probably crossing a professional line, but would you be open to walking through the proposed site with me? I find that these designs make more sense when you can actually stand in the space and envision it. Rachel knew she should say no. She had 17 emails waiting for her attention, 2 more meetings that afternoon and a conference call with investors at 6. But she heard herself saying, when? Now, Ben suggested. The site's only 10 minutes away. It won't take more than an hour. She should definitely say no. But instead, she texted Nina to reschedule her next meeting and followed Ben out to his car. The proposed site was an empty lot downtown, surrounded by a chain-link fence. Ben had a key, and they walked through the space as he described his vision, pointing to where different elements would go. Rachel found herself getting caught up in his enthusiasm, seeing what he saw instead of just an empty lot. This is where the main entrance would be, Ben explained, standing in the center of the space. And if you look up, imagine floor-to-ceiling windows right there. The morning light would pour in. It would feel less like walking into an office and more like coming home. Home, Rachel repeated, the word feeling foreign in her mouth. Most people don't want their office to feel like home. They want to leave work at work. Maybe, Ben said. But what if we spend so much time at work that it becomes a second home whether we like it or not? Shouldn't it be a place where we feel comfortable, where we can be ourselves? Rachel didn't have an answer for that. She'd spent the last 3 years making sure her office was as impersonal as possible. No photos on her desk, no decorations, nothing that revealed who she was beyond her title. They walked the perimeter of the lot, Ben describing load-bearing structures and sustainability features, while Rachel found herself actually relaxing for the first time in weeks. There was something calming about his presence, the way he spoke about buildings like they were living things that needed to serve the people inside them. "Can I ask you something personal?" Ben said as they stood near the back of the lot. "And you can tell me to mind my own business if you want." "You can ask," Rachel said carefully. "That day in the coffee shop when I crashed into you, you looked like you were about to tear my head off." "But then you didn't. Why?" Rachel considered the question. "I saw Lily. I saw how worried she was. And I saw how tired you looked, like you were carrying the weight of the world and trying not to let her see it." Ben nodded slowly. Her mother died 2 years ago. Cancer. It was fast and brutal and completely unfair. Some days I'm barely holding it together, but I have to, because she needs me to. The words hung in the air between them. Rachel felt that crack in her wall widening just a little more. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "That must be incredibly hard." "It is," Ben admitted. "But Lily makes it worth it. She's the reason I get up every morning, the reason I keep going even when everything feels impossible." He turned to look at Rachel directly. "What about you? What gets you up in the morning?" Rachel opened her mouth to say something about quarterly targets or market share, but the words felt hollow. What did get her up in the morning? Habit? Fear of failure? The need to prove she didn't need anyone? "I don't know," she said honestly. And it was the most truthful thing she'd said to anyone in years. They stood there in the empty lot, two people who'd found themselves in conversation they probably shouldn't be having. Ben's phone buzzed, breaking the moment. "That's the school," he said, checking the message. "Lily's not feeling well. I need to go pick her up." "Of course," Rachel said. "Go, we can continue this another time." As Ben headed toward the gate, he turned back. "Look, this is probably completely inappropriate given that you're a client. But would you want to continue this conversation over dinner? Just as friends. I don't really talk to other adults much these days, and you're actually interesting to talk to." Every logical part of Rachel's brain screamed at her to say no. He was a vendor. This was unprofessional. She didn't do dinner with people. She didn't do friends. She kept her walls up for a reason. "Okay," she heard herself say. "As friends." Ben smiled, and it transformed his whole face. "Great, I'll text you. I still have your number from that business card exchange we never completed." As Rachel watched him leave, she wondered what she'd just agreed to. More concerning, she wondered why the prospect of dinner with Ben Morrison made her feel something she hadn't felt in 3 years. It felt like hope. And hope was the most dangerous thing of all. Over the next week, work on the building project continued. There were follow-up meetings, design revisions, and countless emails back and forth. Rachel found herself looking forward to the messages from Ben's team, wondering if he'd include a personal note at the end. Sometimes he did. Small comments about Lily's day at school or a joke about architectural jargon. When Saturday morning came, Rachel found herself standing in front of her closet, trying to decide what to wear to lunch with Ben and Lily. He'd invited her yesterday, explaining that Lily had been asking about the nice lady from the coffee shop and wondered if Rachel would join them at the park. Rachel didn't do parks. She didn't do Saturdays with other people. She worked Saturdays, but here she was pulling on jeans and a casual sweater, feeling like a teenager going on her first date. The park was crowded with families when Rachel arrived. She spotted Ben easily, sitting on a bench while Lily played on the swings. When Lily saw Rachel, she jumped off mid-swing and ran over. "You came. You came. Daddy said you might be too busy, but you came." The pure joy in Lily's voice made Rachel's chest tighten. When was the last time anyone had been this happy to see her? They spent the afternoon together, eating sandwiches Ben had packed and watching Lily play. Rachel found herself telling Ben things she never told anyone. About the pressure of running a company. About the loneliness of always being the one in charge. About how she'd forgotten what it felt like to just be a person instead of a position. Ben listened without judgment, sharing his own struggles with balancing single parenthood and a demanding career. He talked about the guilt of not being enough, of worrying he was failing Lily by not being able to give her everything she needed. "You're not failing her," Rachel said firmly. "Anyone can see how much she loves you. How happy she is. That's not failure." "Thank you," Ben said quietly. "Sometimes I need to hear that." As the sun started to set and Lily fell asleep against Ben's shoulder, exhausted from playing, Rachel realized something had shifted. She'd spent 3 years building walls to protect herself, and this single father and his daughter had somehow found a way through them without even trying. It was terrifying, but maybe, just maybe, it was also exactly what she needed. The third Monday morning after their park meeting, Rachel's phone rang at 7 in the morning. It was Ben, and she could hear the panic in his voice immediately. "Rachel, I'm so sorry to bother you this early, but I have a huge presentation to the City Planning Commission in an hour, and my babysitter just called in sick. Her whole family has the flu. I don't have anyone else to call, and I can't miss this meeting. It's for the new community center project. If I don't present today, we lose our spot and might not get another chance for months." Rachel was already at her office, coffee in hand, prepared for another long day of back-to-back meetings. She should say no. She had investor calls scheduled. She had that merger contract to finalize. She had 17 things on her to-do list that couldn't wait. "Bring her to my office," Rachel heard herself say. "Lily can stay with me." The silence on the other end was so long she thought the call had dropped. "Are you serious?" Ben finally asked. "I don't joke before 8 in the morning," Rachel said. "Bring her. We'll figure it out." 30 minutes later, Ben appeared in her office doorway with Lily, who was wearing a backpack almost as big as she was and clutching her stuffed rabbit. The little girl looked nervous, her eyes wide as she took in Rachel's large corner office with its view of the city. "Are you sure about this?" Ben asked for the third time. "She has snacks in her backpack and her tablet for quiet time and coloring books. She's really good at entertaining herself, I promise." "Ben, go," Rachel said firmly. "We'll be fine. Won't we, Lily?" Lily nodded, but she pressed closer to her father's leg. Ben bent down and kissed the top of her head. "You be good for Miss Rachel, okay? I'll be back in a few hours." After Ben left, Rachel and Lily stood looking at each other. Rachel suddenly realized she had absolutely no idea how to entertain a 6-year-old for several hours. Her office had exactly 0 child-friendly items. There wasn't even a comfortable chair besides her own desk chair and the rigid conference seats. "So," Rachel said, sitting down at her desk and gesturing to the chair across from her. "What do you usually do on Mondays?" Lily climbed into the chair, her feet dangling well above the floor. "I go to school. But there's no school today because it's a teacher planning day." "Right. That would explain why Ben needed a babysitter on a Monday morning. What do you like to do for fun?" Rachel tried. Lily thought about this seriously. "I like to draw. And I like to play pretend. And I like stories. Do you have any stories?" Rachel looked around her office. She had quarterly reports, financial statements, market analysis. Not exactly story material for a first grader. "I'm not sure I have the kind of stories you mean," Rachel admitted. "That's okay," Lily said, opening her backpack and pulling out a coloring book. "I brought my own entertainment. Daddy says I'm very good at being independent." Rachel watched as Lily spread her coloring supplies across the small conference table in the corner of the office. The child worked methodically, selecting each crayon carefully, coloring with intense concentration. It was clear she was used to keeping herself occupied. Rachel tried to focus on her work, but she kept glancing over at Lily. The little girl was humming softly to herself, completely absorbed in her drawing. After about 20 minutes, Rachel's curiosity got the better of her. "What are you drawing?" she asked. Lily looked up, her face brightening. "Do you want to see?" "I do." Lily brought the coloring book over to Rachel's desk. She'd colored a picture of a princess, but she'd added extra details around the edges. Buildings with windows, trees, small figures of people. "This is Princess Lily," the girl explained. "She lives in a tall tower, but she's not trapped there. She just likes the view. And these are all the people in her kingdom. Everyone's happy because she makes sure everyone has what they need." Rachel studied the drawing, touched by the care Lily had taken with each detail. "It's beautiful. You're very talented." "Thank you," Lily said solemnly. Then she tilted her head, studying Rachel. "Can I draw you? Me?" "Yeah. You can sit right there in your fancy chair and I'll draw you like a portrait. That's what artists do." Rachel couldn't remember the last time anyone had wanted to draw her. "Okay, but I need to keep working, so I might not be very interesting to look at." "That's okay," Lily said, returning to the conference table. "Artists find beauty in everything. That's what my mom used to say." The mention of Lily's mother made Rachel's heart clench. She watched as Lily began a new drawing, her small tongue poking out slightly in concentration. Rachel tried to focus on her email, but her mind kept wandering to the child in her office. Around 10 in the morning, Nina knocked on the door with a worried expression. "Rachel, the investors are calling in 15 minutes for the quarterly review." Rachel had completely forgotten. "Right, okay." She looked at Lily. "I need to take a call. It might be boring. Can you stay quiet for about an hour?" Lily nodded seriously. "I'm very good at being quiet. I had to be quiet a lot when Mommy was sick." The simple statement pierced through Rachel's professional armor. This little girl had learned to be quiet and independent because her mother was dying. She'd learned to take care of herself because her father was drowning in grief and responsibility. The investor call was exactly as tedious as Rachel had expected, but she found it harder than usual to focus. She kept thinking about Lily's drawing, about Ben's exhaustion, about how they were both trying so hard to keep going despite everything. When the call finally ended, Rachel found Lily standing at the window, her nose pressed against the glass as she looked out at the city below. "It's so high up," Lily said. "You can see everything from here. But doesn't it make you feel lonely? Being up so high all by yourself?" The question hit Rachel like a physical blow. Out of the mouths of children came the most devastating truths. "Yes," Rachel said quietly. "Sometimes it does." Lily turned to look at her. "That's why I drew this." She held up her picture. It was a drawing of Rachel sitting at her desk, but Lily had drawn people around her, small figures with smiling faces filling the empty office with life and warmth. "You look lonely in here," Lily explained, "so I gave you friends." "Everyone needs friends." Rachel took the drawing, feeling an unexpected lump in her throat. This 6-year-old had seen something in minutes that Rachel had been denying for years. "Thank you, Lily, this is wonderful. Can I keep it?" Lily beamed. "Of course. That's why I made it for you." They ordered lunch from the restaurant downstairs, and Rachel found herself actually enjoying her break instead of working through it like usual. Lily told stories about school, about her best friend Sophie who could do a cartwheel, about her teacher who let them have a class pet hamster named Mr. Whiskers. "Do you have any friends?" Lily asked suddenly. Rachel paused, her sandwich halfway to her mouth. "I have coworkers, business associates, but do you have friends? People you tell secrets to? People who make you laugh?" Rachel thought about her life. She had thousands of connections on professional networking sites. She had hundreds of business contacts. But friends? Real friends who knew her, not just her job title? "No," she admitted. "I don't think I do." Lily looked genuinely sad for her. "That's not good. Everyone needs at least one friend. You can be my friend if you want." Something in Rachel's chest cracked wide open. This little girl, who had every reason to be bitter about life's unfairness, was offering friendship to a stranger. A stranger who'd shown up in her life because her father had accidentally dumped hot chocolate on an expensive suit. "I'd like that very much," Rachel said, and she meant it more than she'd meant anything in a long time. The afternoon passed quickly. Lily showed Rachel games on her tablet, and Rachel found herself actually playing along, laughing at the silly animations and ridiculous songs. She couldn't remember the last time she'd laughed like this, freely and without thinking about what it meant or who was watching. When Ben finally returned, looking exhausted but relieved, he found Rachel and Lily on the floor of the office, surrounded by paper. They'd abandoned technology in favor of making paper airplanes, testing which designs flew the furthest across the room. "Daddy!" Lily jumped up and ran to him. "We had the best day. Miss Rachel is really good at making paper airplanes. And she let me order anything I wanted for lunch, and I drew her picture. Ben looked at Rachel, who was still sitting on the floor in her expensive business casual clothes, a paper airplane in her hand. She probably had creases in her slacks. Her hair had come loose from its usual neat style. She didn't care. How did the presentation go? Rachel asked, standing up and brushing off her pants. We got approved, Ben said, but he was still staring at her like he was seeing her for the first time. The community center is happening. That's wonderful, congratulations. Rachel, I can't thank you enough. You have no idea what this means, you taking her for the day. I know you had to cancel meetings and rearrange things. It was nothing, Rachel said, but it wasn't nothing. It had been everything. For the first time in 3 years, she'd let someone need her. She'd let herself be vulnerable, messy, human. Lily hugged Rachel goodbye, pressing the stuffed rabbit briefly to Rachel's leg before pulling back. Thank you for being my friend, she said seriously. Thank you for being mine, Rachel replied. After they left, Rachel sat at her desk and looked at the drawing Lily had made. At herself surrounded by friends, no longer alone in her tower office. She thought about how good it had felt to laugh today, to play, to just be a person instead of a CEO. Her phone buzzed. A text from Ben. Thank you again, really. Lily keeps talking about how nice you are. She asked if you could come to her art show at school next Friday. I know you're busy, but if you could make it, it would mean the world to her. Rachel looked at her calendar. Friday was packed. She had meetings from 8 in the morning until 6 at night. She had a working dinner with potential investors. She had reports to review and decisions to make. She texted back without thinking. What time is the art show? 3 o'clock at Riverside Elementary. Rachel opened her calendar and did something she never did. She canceled her Friday afternoon meetings. She rescheduled the investor dinner. She cleared her schedule. I'll be there, she typed. As she looked out her window at the city below, Rachel realized that Lily had been right. It was lonely up here in her tower, keeping everyone at a distance, protecting herself from potential hurt. But maybe, just maybe, the risk of being hurt was worth the reward of not being alone. Maybe it was time to start adding some real people to her life. People who saw her as more than just her job title. People who offered friendship without wanting anything in return. People like Ben and Lily Morrison, who had crashed into her life with spilled hot chocolate and had somehow started teaching her how to be human again. Rachel showed up to Lily's art show wearing jeans and a sweater, carrying a bouquet of daisies she'd picked up from the flower shop near her apartment. She felt out of place among the other parents, most of whom seemed to know each other, chatting comfortably while their children dragged them from display to display. When Lily spotted her, the little girl's face lit up like someone had turned on a spotlight. She ran across the gymnasium, nearly tripping over her own feet in her excitement. You came. You really came. I told Sophie you would, but she didn't believe me because she said CEOs don't come to elementary school art shows. Rachel laughed, crouching down to Lily's level. Well, I guess I'm not like most CEOs then. Are you going to show me your art? Lily grabbed Rachel's hand and pulled her toward a wall covered in children's paintings. Ben appeared beside them, wearing a faded polo shirt and looking more relaxed than Rachel had ever seen him. There was paint on his sleeve, probably from helping set up. You made it, he said, and his smile was warm enough to make Rachel's heart do something complicated in her chest. I promised I would, Rachel said simply. Lily's artwork was a series of paintings showing people in different settings. There was one of a family having dinner together, another of kids playing in a park, and one that made Rachel stop in her tracks. It was a painting of 3 people standing outside a building with lots of windows. A tall man, a little girl with a ponytail, and a woman with dark hair pulled back, all holding hands. That's us, Lily explained proudly, at Daddy's new building. The one you're making together. I put all 3 of us there because we're all helping make something beautiful. Rachel felt tears prick at her eyes. She blinked them back quickly, but not before Ben noticed. He looked at her with concern and something else. Something softer. The art show ended and most families dispersed quickly, heading home for dinner. Ben hesitated, looking between Rachel and Lily. We're going to Giuseppe's for pizza, he said. It's kind of our Friday tradition. Would you want to join us? No pressure if you have plans. Rachel thought about her empty apartment, the takeout container that would be her dinner, the work she'd brought home that would keep her busy until midnight. Then she looked at Lily's hopeful face and Ben's cautious smile. I'd love to, she said. Giuseppe's was a small Italian restaurant with checkered tablecloths and pictures of Italy on the walls. It was loud and crowded and smelled amazing. Lily immediately dragged Rachel to a corner booth that was apparently their table, explaining that they came here every Friday because it was Mommy's favorite place. Over pizza and breadsticks, Rachel found herself telling them about her week. Not the business parts, but the real parts. How she'd tried to order coffee without looking at her phone and had actually noticed the weather. How she'd said good morning to her doorman and learned his name was Carlos and he had 3 kids. Small things, but things she'd never paid attention to before. "You're changing," Ben observed, refilling her water glass. "I can see it." "You smile more now. Is that a good thing?" Rachel asked. "It's a beautiful thing," he said quietly. And the way he looked at her made Rachel's stomach flip. Lily was too busy devouring her pizza to notice the moment between the adults, but Rachel noticed. She noticed the way Ben's eyes crinkled when he smiled at her. She noticed how natural it felt to be here with them, sharing a meal and conversation. She noticed that for the first time in 3 years, she felt like she belonged somewhere. Over the next few weeks, Rachel found herself spending more time with Ben and Lily. Saturday park visits became regular occurrences. She attended Lily's soccer games, cheering louder than she'd ever cheered for anything in her life. She helped Ben pick out birthday party invitations and listened to his concerns about whether he was doing enough for his daughter. They grew closer, the 3 of them forming a unit that felt natural despite its unlikeliness. Rachel's coworkers noticed the change in her. She left the office at reasonable hours. She took lunch breaks. She smiled at people in the elevator. Nina, her assistant, asked if she was feeling okay, and Rachel had laughed. "I think I'm feeling better than I have in years," she'd said. But underneath the happiness, fear lurked. Rachel could feel herself falling for Ben, and the realization terrified her. She was getting attached to Lily. She was starting to imagine a future that included Friday pizza dinners and art shows and Saturday afternoons at the park. She was letting people in, and that meant giving them the power to hurt her. The fear crystallized into reality one Tuesday afternoon when David walked into her office. David, her ex-fiancé, the man who'd betrayed her trust and stolen her work. The reason she'd built walls in the first place, he looked exactly the same. Same confident smile, same expensive suit, same charm that had fooled her into thinking he loved her. "Rachel," he said, settling into the chair across from her desk like he had every right to be there. "You look good. Success agrees with you. What do you want, David?" Rachel kept her voice cold, professional. She wouldn't give him the satisfaction of seeing that his presence rattled her. "I'm working with Harrison Tech now. You know, the company that's been trying to acquire one of your competitors. We're putting together a proposal that could benefit both of our companies. A partnership. I thought we could discuss it over dinner." For old time's sake, Rachel stared at him. "You're joking. I'm completely serious. I know how things ended between us, and I've regretted it every day since. I made a mistake, Rachel. I was young and stupid and scared of how much I felt for you. But I've grown up. I've changed, and I think we could do amazing things together, both professionally and personally." Every word out of his mouth sounded rehearsed, calculated. This was David's specialty, saying exactly what he thought people wanted to hear. Rachel had fallen for it once. Before. She wouldn't make that mistake again. "No," she said simply. "No to dinner or no to the proposal? No to all of it. I'm not interested in working with you, and I'm definitely not interested in anything personal. We're done, David. We've been done for 3 years. David leaned back, his expression shifting to something harder. "Don't be hasty. This is a good opportunity. You'd be smart to consider it." "I am considering it, and my answer is no. You can show yourself out." After David left, Rachel sat at her desk feeling like the walls were closing in. He'd waltzed back into her life after 3 years, as if what he'd done hadn't shattered her ability to trust people. As if she should just forgive and forget because it was professionally convenient. The worst part was that a small, scared part of her wanted to say yes. Not because she wanted David back, but because it represented safety. David was predictable. A partnership with him would be purely transactional. No emotions involved. She wouldn't have to risk her heart. Unlike what she was doing with Ben. With Ben, everything felt risky. She was falling for him and his daughter, letting them into her life in ways that terrified her. What if it all fell apart? What if she wasn't enough? What if she got hurt again? That evening, Ben called to invite her to dinner. Rachel found herself making an excuse, claiming she had work to catch up on. She did the same thing the next day when Lily asked if she could come to her school's parent-reader day. And the day after that when Ben suggested a weekend trip to the zoo. Rachel threw herself back into work with the intensity she'd shown before Ben and Lily entered her life. She stayed at the office until midnight. She took meetings during lunch. She responded to emails at 3 a.m. The walls she'd been slowly dismantling she rebuilt with frightening speed. Ben noticed, of course. His texts became more concerned. Is everything okay? Did I do something wrong? Lily keeps asking when you're coming over. Rachel kept her responses brief and professional. Just busy with work. Nothing's wrong. I'll let you know when my schedule clears up. She was protecting herself. That's what she told herself as she declined invitation after invitation. She was being smart, maintaining professional boundaries, not getting in too deep. This was the right thing to do, but it felt wrong. It felt like she was suffocating. Nina finally cornered her one Friday afternoon. Okay, what happened? 2 weeks ago you were leaving early to go to a 6-year-old soccer game. Now you're back to sleeping in your office. Did someone die? I'm just focused on work, Rachel said, not looking up from her computer. No, you're running scared, Nina said bluntly. Look, I've worked for you for 5 years. I've seen you at your worst and your best. These past few weeks, watching you actually have a life outside this office, that was your best. Don't throw it away because you're afraid. I'm not afraid, Rachel insisted, but her voice lacked conviction. Yes, you are, and that's okay. Being scared is human, but hiding from it? That's just going to make you miserable. After Nina left, Rachel sat alone in her office and looked at the drawing Lily had made, still pinned to her bulletin board. The picture of her surrounded by friends, no longer alone in her tower. She thought about David and his calculated offer. She thought about Ben and his genuine kindness. She thought about Lily and her open heart, despite everything the little girl had lost. She thought about who she wanted to be. The woman in the tower, safe and alone? Or the woman who took risks, who opened her heart, who allowed herself to be vulnerable even when it was terrifying? Rachel's phone buzzed. Another text from Ben. We're having movie night tonight. Lily's choice, which means probably something with talking animals. There's popcorn and hot chocolate with extra marshmallows. You're welcome to join us if you want. No pressure, Rachel stared at the message. This was it. This was the choice. She could delete the text and keep building her walls. Or she could show up and risk everything. Her hands shook as she typed. What time? The response came immediately. 7, and Rachel? I'm glad you're coming. Rachel looked at the clock. It was 5:30. She had 90 minutes to finish up and get to Ben's house. 90 minutes to choose fear or choose courage. She shut down her computer and grabbed her coat. When she arrived at Ben's house, Lily answered the door and immediately wrapped her arms around Rachel's waist. You came. I missed you so much. Daddy said you were busy, but I knew you'd come back. Inside, Ben was in the kitchen making popcorn. When he saw Rachel, relief flooded his face. Hey, he said quietly. Hey, Rachel replied. I'm sorry. I've been scared. Ben finished. I get it. Trust me. I understand being scared of letting someone in. They stood looking at each other, the air thick with everything unsaid. Lily had already retreated to the living room to set up the movie, giving them a moment alone. David showed up at my office, Rachel explained. My ex, the one who... She trailed off, not wanting to say the words out loud. The one who hurt you, Ben said gently. Yeah. And seeing him made me remember why I built those walls in the first place, why I stopped letting people get close. And you ran, Ben said. It wasn't an accusation, just a statement of fact. I ran, Rachel confirmed, but I don't want to keep running. I don't want to spend the rest of my life in that tower, alone and safe but miserable. Ben moved closer, close enough that Rachel could smell his cologne, something woodsy and warm. What do you want? Rachel looked into his eyes and saw the same fear she felt reflected back at her. He was scared too. He was risking his heart and his daughter's happiness by letting Rachel into their lives. They were both terrified, but they were both here. I want this, Rachel said softly. I want Friday pizza dinners and art shows and movie nights with talking animals. I want to be part of your life. Both of your lives. If you'll have me. Ben smiled, that slow, warm smile that made her heart race. We've been waiting for you to figure that out. From the living room, Lily called out, Come on. The movie's starting. They joined Lily on the couch, and without thinking about it, Rachel found herself in the middle, Lily on one side and Ben on the other. As the opening credits rolled, Lily leaned against her shoulder, and Ben's arm stretched across the back of the couch, his fingers gently touching Rachel's hair. It was terrifying, this feeling of belonging, of being part of something bigger than herself, of mattering to people who mattered to her. But it was also wonderful. For the first time in 3 years, Rachel wasn't alone in her tower. She was here, messy and vulnerable and scared, but she was here, and that was everything. The next 2 months were the happiest Rachel could remember being in years. She and Ben fell into an easy rhythm, their relationship deepening naturally from friendship into something more. They didn't rush things, both of them aware that Lily needed time to adjust and that they needed to be sure this was real. Rachel learned to balance her work with actual life. She left the office at 6 most evenings. She spent Saturdays with Ben and Lily instead of reviewing contracts. She laughed more. She relaxed. She allowed herself to be happy. Her company thrived too, surprisingly. It turned out that a CEO who wasn't burned out made better decisions. Rachel found herself more creative, more energized, more effective. The building project with Ben's firm was progressing beautifully, and the design was getting attention from architectural magazines. Everything was falling into place. Which is exactly when Rachel should have known something would go wrong. The trouble started with a phone call on a Tuesday morning. The merger she'd been working on for months, the deal that would triple her company's market share, was falling apart. The other company's CEO was getting cold feet. Investors were pulling out, and if Rachel didn't do something drastic, the whole thing would collapse. David called that afternoon with a solution. Harrison Tech would step in as a partner, providing the financial backing needed to complete the merger. But there were conditions. Rachel would need to work closely with David's team. There would be late nights, weekend strategy sessions, constant collaboration, and David made it clear he saw this as an opportunity for more than just business. "Think about it, Rachel," he said over the phone. "We were good together once. We could be good together again, professionally and personally. You're not going to throw away a billion-dollar deal because of old grudges, are you?" Rachel wanted to say no immediately, but her board was pressuring her. Her investors were demanding results. The future of her company and all her employees' jobs hung in the balance. This wasn't just about her anymore. She accepted the partnership with Harrison Tech. She told herself it was purely business. She could handle working with David. She was stronger now. She wouldn't let him manipulate her, but she didn't tell Ben. The work consumed her again. Rachel found herself canceling plans with Ben and Lily, missing soccer games, skipping Friday dinners. She was always exhausted, always stressed, always thinking about the next meeting or the next deadline. Ben was patient at first. He understood that her work was important, but as weeks passed and Rachel's absences became more frequent, she could see the hurt in his eyes. Lily stopped asking when Rachel would come over, which was somehow worse than the questions. One evening, 3 weeks into the partnership with David, Rachel was working late at the office when Ben showed up. He didn't look angry, just tired and sad. "We need to talk," he said quietly.